This movie was not directed by Tim Burton. On this episode of Moving Panels, we discuss the Addams Family. Welcome to Moving Panels, the podcast where we discuss movies and TV shows based on, inspired by, and adapted from the world of comic books. I'm your host, Laramy Wells, and joining me today in the co-host chair is my wonderful daughter, Ruby Wells. How are you, Ruby?
Good.
All right, so it is towards the end of August, which means your birthday is right around the corner. And so, as always, I let you do an episode around your birthday, and this is that one, and you chose to do the Addams Family, the one from 1991.
Yeah.
So, even when your mom was a small child is when this movie came out, and you weren't even a thought. So, why did you pick this Addams Family?
I really like Addams Family, and this is one of my favorite ones.
I mean, I think it's most people's favorite one. This is it's a great one. So we are talking about the 91 film. This is the one that was released November 22nd, 1991. And although a lot of people think it was directed by Tim Burton, because it does have a very Tim Burton feel, it was not. Tim Burton was, however, supposed to direct it, but he passed in order to direct Batman Returns. And I have no problem with him choosing to do that. This instead was directed by Barry Sonnenfeld. This was actually his directorial debut. Before this, for those of you who don't know, Barry Sonnenfeld was a cinematographer. So he was the guy that planned out the shots. That's what a cinematographer does.
Okay.
Plans out all the shots. He did that for the Tom Hanks movie Big and for the classic romantic comedy When Harry Met Sally. He was the cinematographer on those. For those of you who think, hey, I'm pretty sure I've seen a Barry Sonnenfeld movie. Well, he went on to direct Men in Black and did the first few Men in Black movies. And then you are familiar with Barry Sonnenfeld because he is the man behind and directed, I don't know if he directed all the episodes, but he's the man behind Netflix's A Series of Unfortunate Events.
Oh, cool.
So, yep. So another thing you really enjoy.
Yeah.
So same guy. And in fact, he's got a cameo. He threw himself into the movie. He is the passenger of the model train. Yeah, I pointed that out to you while we watched it. He's the passenger on the model train when Gomez is releasing his anger by crashing the model trains.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and jump.
That scene that doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah, it's so weird that scene, because I get that there's a lot of weird and zany and out of the ordinary in the Addams Family, but that scene to me,
because sometimes there is some logic behind them, but that has no logic.
The fact that there's a real person inside of this model train who is apparently riding it thinking it's a train like he's going to get to work or something.
Yeah, it's so confusing.
Yeah, I didn't really get that one. So let's talk about that there is kind of a comic book. We've done this before when we talked about the Wednesday television series in a previous episode. There is a comic. Now, it wasn't a comic book per se to start off with. They were single panel comics, kind of like political cartoons, as some of you know.
Annie?
Do what?
Like Annie?
Well, no, Annie was a comic strip.
Oh, okay.
The Addams Family was just a single panel. Like it was just one picture. And they would reveal something. And the first one debuted in the New Yorker back in 1938, which was the same year Superman debuted.
Oh, cool.
So back there. And of course, they were created by cartoonist Charles Addams. Thus is how they got the name The Addams Family, because he did not actually name any of them. They got that name just because of him. In fact, all their first names didn't come in until the television show back in the 60s.
Really?
Yes. So this movie is more so a movie version of the TV show than you would say it's a movie version of the comic strip or the single panel comic.
Okay, but the movie's based off the TV show, which was based off of the... Okay, so it has some way around it to be related to a comic.
Yeah, and that did lead to some issues with the making of this film, but we might get into that a little bit later. Let's go ahead and jump into the characters, and we'll start off with the person who is considered kind of the main star of this film, and that is Angelica Houston, playing Morticia Addams. This was a role that was pretty much designed for her. They really didn't have anyone else in mind. Angelica has said that she based her performance off of Jerry Hall. I know you don't know who Jerry Hall is. She was a model and an actress from the 80s. She used to be the partner. I don't think they were ever married, but she was the partner of Mick Jagger from the Rolling Stones. She was, however, at one point married to Rupert Murdoch, who's one of the richest men of the world.
Oh.
But Angelica Houston says she did base her performance off of Jerry Hall. She had to wear a corset, and it was a metal corset.
Ow.
Yeah. In order to give her that very slender, form that Morticia always has.
Yeah.
And they also decided that they wanted Morticia to have kind of the pushed back, pointing eyes, which
siren eyes.
Yes, which Angelica Houston does not actually have. So they actually had to use elastic straps and spirit gum, which is a really strong glue.
That's painful.
To pull back on her eyes. Yeah.
I hate it.
In fact, Angelica Houston would say that by the end of the day, she would have a headache, sometimes a rash. I've actually had to use spirit glue in a show before, and it actually caused me to have a little bit of a rash. And she was just exhausted because you got to think she's walking around in this metal corset, so she can barely probably breathe. She can probably it's limiting the way she can move.
Yeah.
And she's got these straps that are pushing back on her face so that they give her that look with her eyes. So, yeah, not very comfortable.
I would have gone okay, yeah, I can wear a corset, but not a metal one. I'm not wearing a metal one. I don't care if you fire me from the show. I'm not wearing a metal corset.
Yeah, and some people say, well, why wouldn't she just remove them when she wasn't filming? Well, according to what I read, is that if they removed the straps during a break and, got her out of the corset and all that, it would take hours to not only remove them, but then also have to retach everything. And that would have just wasted time and money. So once she was in it for the day until they were completely done.
Okay. So they probably had to start really early and then end kind of not late so that they
I would hope that they would try to film many things with her as they could. Now, one of the downsides is that it was reported that if she turned her head, it would sometimes cause the straps to snap. And so they would have to, stop and fix it and all that. So, yeah, not very great. And of course, with the corset, she had to learn how to pivot so that she could move without necessarily turning her upper body all that much. So she had to learn how to just kind of pivot on her toes. In order to turn her body without actually using her upper body. You know how when you walk and you turn, you kind of turn with your shoulders?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She couldn't do that.
She couldn't do that. She had to learn how to pivot on her feet, which of course gives her that, you got to say, as Morticia, it gives her that kind of very unique walk that she has when she does move. But, all right, let's move on. Let's talk about Gomez Addams, played here by Raul Julia. In one of his final appearances, he did this movie and then the sequel. And unfortunately, Raul Julia did pass away, I think in 94. Maybe later. I may have that date wrong. But yeah, this was one of his final performances. And it's one that he did say in interviews, he considers this his favorite role.
It's a very fun role.
Yeah, I love Raul Julia here. Nothing against John Astin, who played him in the show. I love John Astin. Same thing with all the performers from the 60s television show. That's what I grew up watching and absolutely love them and still love watching those. But yeah, Raul Julia, he has so much fun playing Gomez.
Cool.
So, did you like him as Gomez?
Yeah, that was fun.
Of course, not really what Gomez looks like in the comics. In the comics, Gomez is short and kind of pudgy.
Yeah.
So, all right. And then we've got Doc Brown himself, Christopher Lloyd, as Uncle Fester. I might as well say he was Uncle Fester.
Yeah.
Even though he is supposed to be Gordon, what's his last name? Do you remember?
No idea. They barely said his last name.
It's Gordon something. I can't remember. And of course, the big thing was, is he supposed to be Uncle Fester or not Uncle Fester? And of course, at the end, I mean, spoilers. This is a 1991 movie. At the end, it is revealed he actually is Uncle Fester. He just lost his memory.
Yeah, in the Bermuda Triangle.
Yep. But just like with the actor in the 60s television show, he did wear a fat suit. So that's why, it looks maybe just a little off, but that's what Uncle Fester looks like. So it works.
I feel like, I don't know why, but to me, if he didn't have his shoulders up to his face, it didn't look like Uncle Fester.
Yeah, because Christopher Lloyd's Uncle Fester doesn't have much of a neck, does he?
No.
No. All right, and then we've got probably someone who just made this role iconic for her.
Yeah.
And that is Wednesday Addams, played by the very young Christina Ricci. She was 11 at the time. So not as young as Lisa Loring, who played her in the 60s television show, because Lisa Loring, I believe, in the first season of that, she was only 6.
Oh.
When she played Wednesday. But here, Christina Ricci was 11 at the time. And Christina Ricci did say that she inspired her performance off of Winona Ryder's performance as Lydia in Beetlejuice.
Oh, cool.
So I know you're a big fan of Beetlejuice.
Yes.
So that's pretty cool that she looked at the way Winona Ryder performed in Beetlejuice, and that's how she based her performance. That kind of stoic, talking without a lot of emotion, I think, is where she's getting a lot of that from, because Lydia had a lot of that, where Lydia just didn't care.
Yeah.
To begin with. Then we've got Pugsley Addams, played by Jimmy Workman. Jimmy Workman didn't do an awful lot following this. I think he had a couple of other movies, but he kind of stayed out of the limelight. So this is kind of his one and only big thing that he ever did. We've got Grandmama, played by Judith Malina. Then we got Lurch, played by Karel Strucken. And I probably pronounced that wrong, but
probably.
We'll see. I had to give credit to the hand that was Thing. That was the hand of Christopher Hart. Then we've got Cousin It, played by John Franklin. Now, I know you don't know who this is, but for people listening, John Franklin is Isaac from Children of the Corn. So if you don't know, he is a small person.
Little person?
Well, he's not necessarily a little person. He's got another kind of a genetic disorder to where he will always look like a child, even as he ages.
Huh.
So he was, pretty much, he was an adult, but if you actually saw what he looked like, he looked like he was still a child. There was a few of those, like Gary Coleman, the Emmanuel Lewis who played Webster. I know you don't know who I'm talking about, but those were other actors who had that condition. I did find out that the hair for Cousin It, the hair weighed 35 pounds.
That is not surprising for how much hair it has.
But John Franklin only weighed about 100 pounds.
Oh.
So that means he's carrying a third of his body weight.
Oh, no.
By wearing that hair. He actually had to wear a neck brace and a hoop skirt that had a fan that was blowing on him to keep him cool underneath all that hair.
Hopefully he could actually take it off every now and then.
Yeah, I would hope. I didn't see. I would hope he would be able to have taken it off. I did find out, though, that they didn't use any type of sound effect or anything. That is actually John Franklin speaking in the gibberish that it speaks.
What, really?
Yep. So that was actually him making the doing the, I guess you'd say, dialogue of it. The yeah. All
that
of
was a good impression.
Thank you. Then finishing off the cast, we'll just knock some of these out. We've got Abigail Craven, played by Elizabeth Wilson. Tully Alford, played by Dan Hedaya. Margaret Alford, played by Dana Ivey, who would be the woman who would later end up with Cousin It. Then we've got Judge George Womack, the next door neighbor to the Addams, played by Paul Benedict. We've got cousin Ophelia Frump, played by Allegra Kent. And then I had to mention the Girl Scout in the one little scene, played by Mercedes McNabb, who would actually play a bigger part in the sequel. They liked her so much. But I have to mention that she was Harmony on both Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel, which I know you haven't watched yet. That'll be a few more years before you start watching those. So, as always, I have to ask the question, of all of the characters you saw, who do you want to see again? And who do you wish would pull the wrong chain and get launched out of the house?
Ooh.
So who was your favorite character and who was your least favorite character?
Oh, that's what that means.
Yeah?
Okay. I want to say that my favorite character was Wednesday.
I kind of saw that coming.
Yeah. And my least favorite character, who was Abigail Craven? Which one was that?
She was Gordon's mom.
Oh, yeah, her.
She was the bad guy.
Her.
Yeah, she was the bad guy.
I mean, that did actually happen to her, but still.
Yes, it does. Yep. She does get launched out of the house. So yeah, I just adore Raul Julia as Gomez Addams here. So I'd have to say I kind of wish that we were able to get more than just 2 movies out of this cast, just in general, and especially to get to see him a little bit more. I probably actually could have done without Tully with the Dan Hyeda character. I get that he was the connection, like he was already the one working the finances and legal side for the Addams, and that's how Gordon and Abigail get in. But I kind of saw his character as not really being needed.
Yeah, I feel like if they just didn't have him, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. I mean, they kind of needed him for the one that, I forgot her name, the one that, Margaret. Mm-hmm. They kind of needed him for Margaret.
Yeah, to introduce her into the story and
yeah,
have her actually become one of the Addams, in essence, join the Addams family. Yeah, I agree with that.
What's up, dudes? I'm Jerry D of Totally Rad Christmas, the podcast that talks all things Christmas in the 80s. Toys, movies, specials, music, books, fashion, and fads.
If it was gnarly during Christmas in the 80s, he's got it covered. Wait, is there a lot of things to talk about for the 80s and Christmas?
Well, you got the movie giants like Christmas Vacation, Scrooged, and A Christmas Story. There are TV specials like Muppet Family Christmas, Claymation Christmas Celebration, and a Garfield Christmas special.
Plus classics shown every year.
You also jam out to Last Christmas, Do They Know It's Christmas, and Christmas in Hollis. But most of all, it was a time for the most bodacious, best-selling Christmas toys ever, like He-Man, G.I. Joe, Transformers,
and Cabbage Patch Kids.
Yes, them too. We cover them all, plus much more, including standard segments like Hap Happiest Memory, Gag Me with the Spoon, The Other Half of the Battle,
and Chant with the Littles.
So tune in to Totally Rad Christmas everywhere you get your podcasts. Turn the clock back and dive into those warm and fuzzy memories.
Later, dudes.
All right, so let's get into the moving panels. There's not an awful lot here, as we talked about back in the Wednesday episode, because, again, you're talking about single panel comics that weren't really meant to have much of a story and anything more to them. Of course, later they would write Addams Family comic books, but again, those were more inspired by the TV show and so on, which is, again, what we just talked about, that this movie is also based off. Again, it is a comic book, yes, or a comic, I should say, not a comic book, but it is a comic, a cartoon that was adapted into a TV show in 1964 that ran for 3 seasons, highly successful. People love watching it even in reruns now. And that caused a little bit of issue because Dan Levy, who was kind of the creator behind the TV show in the 60s, he actually sued Paramount because, as I just mentioned to you, it's the TV show that gave them their character names. The TV show created Cousin It. Cousin It was not from the comic.
Really?
Yes, Charles Addams did not create Cousin It. It was actually Dan Levy who did. And it was the TV show that made Thing a disembodied hand.
Yeah, you told me about that. I remember because you were showing me like the comic book pictures and how it was Thing was actually just like someone who hid in just their house.
Yeah, Thing was just this person who was just, you would see hidden in some of the backgrounds of their the comic. But
I don't understand why they turned him into a hand, though.
Yes, but can you see anything else? Like, that's Thing. That's what we think of when we think of Thing.
I know, but
it's such an iconic thing to the Addams Family. Which I love how we talked about, all the weird and all that, and we thought that the man sitting in the train was the wildest thing, but we have no problem with this sentient, disembodied, hand running around.
It's not as bad as the train, because I feel like the hand is just a regular thing in the Addams thing, and because they have a bunch of like monster kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But the whole thing with the guy in the train just doesn't make any sense. And I want to point out another thing. Why aren't the carolers at the beginning of the movie have their backs to the door?
Yeah, so classic little opening there of the carolers singing, and then they pan up to the top, and you see Gomez, Morticia, Lurch, and Grandmama. Notice the kids are not there.
No, Wednesday was there.
But yeah, they're involved in pouring hot tar on top of the carolers, which is the most like sinister thing the Addams do.
I feel like they don't do stuff that bad.
No, yeah, they're typically not portrayed as bad people, but that really was an evil thing for them to do. Typically they're portrayed as nice people, just weird.
Yeah, they're nice, but they're just weird. They're just crazy people.
Very interesting that they would have that as the opening. But going back to the lawsuit, it was settled out of court. I couldn't find a price. Not that I really care. But yeah, it was settled out of court. So we were able to get not only this Addams Family, but a sequel out of it. And we just get more Addams Family as the years go by.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some differences from the comic to this. So first off, we talked about the Thing and how different the Thing is. I do also want to mention that...
It's not the Thing, it's just Thing.
Well, Thing, yeah. I do also want to mention that in the comic, Wednesday has a pet octopus.
Oh, I feel like this was in the cartoon that she had an octopus.
Yeah, the cartoon is a little closer to the actual cartoon. But do you think they could have done that in a live action movie? Could they have given her a pet octopus?
No, probably not.
Yeah. I also want to point out that when they started making the connections, because in the comic, it's never clear who Fester is with Grandmama a lot. So you think that there's a connection between Fester and Grandmama, but they never really, at least to my knowledge, they never really make the family connection between how is Grandmama and Fester related to Gomez and Morticia.
So they just assume that Uncle Fester was an uncle, Gomez's brother.
So if you go back to the TV show, because like I said, this is also connected to the TV show.
I know.
In the TV show, Fester is actually Morticia's uncle.
Huh?
Yeah. So in this movie, they make Fester and Gomez brothers. But in the TV show, he was pretty much everybody's uncle. Like, he was Morticia's uncle, which would make him Wednesday and Pugsley's great uncle.
I feel like I don't like that. I don't like that.
And then in the TV show, Grandmama was Gomez's mother.
I mean, isn't that how it is in the movie?
No, they make it so that Grandmama is Morticia's mother.
Oh, I thought it was Gomez's mother in the movie.
No, because then that would also make her Fester's mother. And you would think that would be a bigger thing with this movie. With Fester, since, Fester's long lost, it would be a bigger deal about...
Oh, yeah, because, Yeah, because Grandmama was there.
Yeah, so Grandmama is actually Morticia's mom in the movie, but she was Gomez's mom in the TV show.
I guess they changed it just for plot reasons, probably.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously making Fester and Gomez brothers gave a different level to the story.
I kind of like them being brothers.
I do too.
Better.
I do too. I like them being brothers.
Because I feel like the way how Uncle Fester is so energetic doesn't make him feel like he's a great uncle.
Yeah.
If you know what I'm trying to say.
No, I do. And I don't think it really matters who Grandmama is the mother of.
No, definitely
Again,
not.
it made sense for this story.
Yeah.
For her not to be Gomez and Fester's mom. So it made more sense there, but I don't think it really matters. No offense to, to any actress that plays Grandmama, or to the character itself, but Grandmama is probably, in my opinion, the lesser Addams Family character.
Yeah.
Like, I honestly think Lurch gets a little bit more respect than Grandmama does. That's just my opinion.
I remember the one scene where it's Halloween and Lurch opens the door and he thinks that everything's fine.
He's so happy to give out candy, yeah.
And then these poor innocent children see his face and start just screaming and running off, and poor Lurch just going like, what did I do?
Which is so funny because you would think, there's so many other movies that deal with, like, think about the Munsters.
Yeah.
There's times when people see the Munsters and they just think they're in costume.
Yeah.
And so it being Halloween night, why wouldn't these kids just think, oh, this is a dude with a really cool costume? But yeah.
I mean, some costumes are still scary though. And I mean, those were little kids. They couldn't tell the difference between a costume and a human being, probably. They couldn't tell that was a costume. It wasn't, but still.
Yeah. So let's talk about the story. So we got Uncle Fester, long lost. The guy who works the finances for the Addams ends up discovering this other guy named Gordon, who resembles Fester, just fortunately. I just think it's so by coincidence. Like, what are the chances that they would run into each other? And I don't know. It just seems a little convenient.
My question is, how did he know what Fester looked like? Because he only saw like a painting of him that did not look like him.
Well, I think you're also to assume he's worked with the Addams for so long. There's a chance he actually knew Fester. I don't know if they actually make it clear that he didn't know Fester.
Maybe.
But from the descriptions that Gomez would tell him, and then like you said, from paintings that might be around the house that we didn't see, or maybe stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
probably.
Very possible. And of course, they're trying to steal the Gomez's fortune, which I mentioned this when we were watching it. I have always loved that about the Addams Family, is that they're just insanely rich. And there's really
no reason why.
Yeah, there's really no good explanation other than Gomez just openly and willingly just invests in things out of his generosity, and it apparently just always eventually works out in his favor. Yeah, and
they only really establish that they have jobs once their fortune gets stolen.
Yeah. So yeah, they eventually, because Fester is supposed to be the older Adam, he is the one who actually gets all the money, and they kick out the Addams, but then they come back, and Fester ends up becoming one of them, and then he gets electrocuted, which jogs his memory, and it is in fact Uncle Fester. But I will tell you this: Barry Sonnenfeld, the director, did not want it to be revealed whether Fester was actually Fester or not.
Really?
He wanted to keep it completely open.
Like, just imagine the actual Uncle Fester just came through the door and said, "Hey guys, I'm back from my trip."
No, he didn't want any reveal. Like, he didn't want it to be revealed at all. Like, you still would question whether this was the actual Fester or not.
Oh.
He did not want a definitive, like, this is or is not Uncle Fester.
Oh.
He wanted to leave it open for, I guess, maybe what they could have done with a second movie.
But the other people are going like, no, we don't want to do that.
Oh, it wasn't just the cast did not like the idea. In fact, they actually got Christina Ricci, little 11-year-old Christina Ricci. They sent her to Barry Sonnenfeld.
I mean, he wasn't gonna listen to the adults.
Yeah, that was the thing. You got to listen to sweet, innocent little Christina Ricci telling him, "Hey, look, we don't like this idea. You're gonna have to tell them that this is Uncle Fester."
Grows up to hate her own character.
Yeah.
Because of the Wednesday show, just fight her own character.
The only other thing I have to talk about is that apparently this movie was cursed.
What?
Yeah. A lot of bad things happened while they were filming this movie. So let's go through a few of those. So first off, the director himself, Barry Sonnenfeld, actually passed out on set. Collapsed.
Just randomly?
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah. Just passed out on set. Another thing that happened was the director of photography, so the cinematographer, in other words, quit.
Oh.
So then they brought in his replacement, who then had to be rushed to the hospital for an incident, which caused Barry Sonnenfeld, the director, to not only serve as director, but also had to serve as the director of photography for the movie.
Oh. Yeah. Okay.
Of course, we've talked about all of the stuff with Angelica Houston and what she had to go through playing Morticia. We talked about, Cousin It and the 35 pounds of hair that he had to wear. We talked about Uncle Fester, and in fact, he was in a fat suit, so you got to think that wasn't probably comfortable, and that was probably very hot. So a lot of the times where you're noticing he's sweating, that was probably real. But it
only happened in the most great spots, the best spots that it could have been in.
Oh yeah, I mean, if they didn't want him to be sweating, they would have cleared that up before they shot the close-ups.
Yeah, and didn't he have to run because he was playing with the kids?
Oh, he had to do all sorts of things. I mean, you got to think the mamushka. You got to think all that dancing and all that. Which, since I brought that up, do you know that was supposed to be an actual musical number?
Yeah, you told me, but they had to cut it.
Yeah, they cut it down.
The movie was too long.
Well, they thought it was also a little too cheesy for the movie. Imagine
Probably.
that.
Imagine the Addams Family movie being cheesy.
Yeah. So we get a little hint of it at the end where they sing, but there was supposed to be a full song and dance number, and so
cool.
Yeah. But going back to things happening to the cast, so Raul Julia actually at one point popped a blood vessel in his eye. And that causes your eye to look really red because it kind of fills up with blood. And so they had to reschedule how they were going to shoot the film to kind of shoot around that.
Which one was Julia?
Gomez.
Okay.
Yeah. Raul Julia played Gomez. And so they had to shoot around that. So they had to shoot scenes that maybe he wasn't in, or shoot scenes from where you wouldn't see him straight on to his face to be able to see the eye.
Oh.
So they had to do a lot of that to shoot around it until it healed up.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah. And then, unfortunately, another thing that happened was Barry Sonnenfeld's wife became seriously ill during production, which caused a full halt to production.
I mean, that makes sense.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're not going to blame him for doing that. But again, that just falls under what they call the Addams Family curse in terms of all the stuff that has happened during the making of this movie. But what was your favorite scene? I want to ask you that. What's your favorite scene in this movie?
The train scene.
Really? The train scene is?
And the Girl Scout scene.
Yeah.
The lemonade scene.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Is your lemonade made from actual lemons?
Is your Girl Scout cookies made from actual Girl Scouts?
Yeah. It's a great line. I will admit that. Yeah, I do. I mean, the train scene is fun, and I do like that they know exactly what's happening just by listening.
Just dead man's curve.
Yeah.
Through the tunnel.
I get a kick at. I mean, there's so many great scenes in this. I remember I pointed out when Gomez and Fester go into the vault, and they're sliding down the slide. There's just one quick shot where all of a sudden Gomez is behind Fester.
Yeah.
Even though he was in front of him through the whole... There's just a quick shot. And backwards. Yeah, they're back to back. But Gomez is behind him just randomly. And I find that so funny.
It's very funny.
All right, well, let's get into it. Again, short episode here, but...
Very short.
Yeah. But, I mean, unless you got more you want to talk about, I think we've covered everything that we could cover. So let's get into it. Bag it, stack it, or trade it. So, Ruby, for your birthday episode here of the Addams Family, what say you?
Bag it. Definitely bag it. Definitely.
Any particular reasons you want to give?
It's one of my favorites. I really like this movie. I don't think I've ever actually watched the full Addams Family movie. I've only watched the beginning. Because I did not remember when they lost their fortune. I didn't remember that. All I could remember was, like, Fester being there, them trying to figure out it's Fester. That's all I remembered. And then we watched it again, and I was like, I don't remember these parts. I guess I've just never watched the full Addams Family movie until pretty recently.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a bag it for me. I mean, this is a classic movie.
It's a really good one, too.
And I will say, I know you made a comment as we were watching about some of the computer effects, like with Thing. And yes, some of them are a bit dated, but I honestly think this movie still holds up. Like,
yeah, I just feel like sometimes you could see more skin, just kind of a little bit faded, but you could still like see more skin on like more of the arm.
Yeah.
Some of the arm on skin. On Thing.
Yeah. Yeah, again, some of the computer effects are probably a little dated, but I still think the movie holds up. I don't think it looks like a movie that came out in 91 too much.
Yeah, definitely.
And I've always enjoyed... I'm a huge fan of the Addams Family and the Munsters, the TV shows. Again, I grew up in the 80s and 90s. Of course, I watched them as reruns, but I loved watching them. And I love that this movie continues that same idea that the TV show does, of where it's a message of acceptance, even when people are different, you accept them. The Addams are friends with anybody and everybody.
Yeah, it takes them a bit, but yeah.
But they don't have to, even the people who are, kind of mean to them, the Addams still look favorably upon. Like, they still look at them as in a positive light. And I love that message. It celebrates the importance of embracing your own individuality.
Yeah.
Be who you want to be. Who cares what anybody else thinks?
Yeah.
And that's what I love about the Addams Family.
I just wanted to say something. I like the evolution of the Addams Family, because it went from just pictures to it's making its own show about an individual character.
Yeah. Yeah, but even in the Wednesday television show on Netflix, there's still there's still the other Addams.
Yeah, but still.
I know, it focuses on Wednesday. But I also love that even that show has one of the themes from the Addams Family, and that's that they are a very supportive and loving family.
Yeah.
And that they will support one another, pretty much no matter what. It's an unwavering support.
Yeah.
And they show that even with, Uncle Fester, with the issues that come up with him, and, them not necessarily, Wednesday starts to not trust him a little bit, but they still love him because they believe he is their uncle. And it's great. I love the Addams Family. And so, I can't say anything but bag it.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll go ahead and wrap this up for this episode and for Ruby's birthday here that's coming up in a little over a week from when this episode is airing. But any last words you want to say, Ruby?
No, I don't. I just feel like needs to be some explanation on the caroler thing, but
maybe we can find out one day why they decided to do that. But
one day.
But we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Thanks everybody for listening. Rate and review the show. Prepare for in 2 weeks. We've got our end of our season, end of the year, because our year ends in Moving Panels at the end of August. Our bad movie. And this year we did Jonah Hex. So get ready for that one. But we'll wrap things up for today for Moving Panels. I'm Laramy Wells, and I'll see you on the other side of the page.
I forgot your outro music.